I think this is the official start of the episode. So, hello everyone. Um, yeah, I think it's been a little bit slow in the bear market, right? And every week we're like, okay, there's some major proposals and major things being passed on chain from some of the major DAOs. Arbitrum's STIP proposal, or if you say STIP, I say STIP because you know that's more fun to say. But a lot of public goods funding getting going, which I think is kind of indicative of the ecosystem as a whole, right? Like, okay, how do we incentivize more people, more activity on chain and in the ecosystem? It's okay, we take these DAO treasuries and we start and injecting it into the ecosystem. Um, I think there's people who, I mean, I think it's been proven, with the amount of, like actual proposals for grant proposals for these incentive programs or funding programs like Optimism, Arbitrum, Gitcoin, etc. I think there's a lot of demand for funds and ideas, especially within like consumer crypto. But I think that's kind of at the stage you're at right now, in terms of like the temperature of the ecosystem. It's we're pretty low. I know you've been in the ecosystem unrelated to that, which is like crypto ecosystem as a whole longer than I have. So you've seen it all. But also like at the same time, we're both Zoomers and young. Um, like it feels pretty rock bottom right now. Knock on wood. But at the same time, this is rock bottom. Seeing DAO still function and a lot of capital being moved around to try and get the ecosystem back up and running and flourishing on its feet. I think it's pretty cool to see. I don't know, like how you're thinking about the ecosystem as a whole right now. Like what are you seeing? What do you feel? What's the pulse? CHG.
Yeah, agree, definitely. Like, it's weird having gone full time at like the end of 2019 or so. And they're just being like inflow, inflow, inflow. And we're like, oh, we're seeing the good times. They're coming, you know? And now having to like even writing the newsletter and being like, what should I write on, guys? Because there's just not that much that's happening and that's super exciting and invigorating, I guess, is more the thing. So like there obviously are still projects across the ecosystem. Even the steps stuff is like super cool, and reminiscent to some degree of the past. Like when Gitcoin started first doing grants, that was sweet. But in general, it's a really weird vibe. Like it's a weird vibe on all levels. Do you know what I mean? Like it's weird when you go to CoinGecko and you look at the token price of the social DAO you were involved in 2020. It's weird when you're just scrolling Twitter. It's weird having to report on like important news where there's not that much. Or what there is different from the sort of like I guess sensational news of the past, you know? I mean, even about a year ago, I was writing, I remember on like crazy nouns proposals. A year before that, I was telling everyone my work is like a TV show, the like amount of crazy stuff that's like ideated, funded, actually executed on. And now it's I think Frisian said this, like it's a now there are truly no tourists left, because you'd have nothing to do. In a way, it does feel like a lot of like the grifters have distanced themselves, because there's nothing left to grift on too much. But I was having a conversation with my old colleague at Index Coop yesterday, and we were reminiscing on all the like crazy stuff that got funded in 2020 by Index Coop, and we didn't really think twice about voting like easily yes on it. I think a lot of DAOs and people in the ecosystem can relate to this. Like now you see budgets being resubmitted 3 4 times, on chain nonetheless, not even just like talked about in forums like that. Whereas in the old days, it was like, take this money and run with it. Let's do this thing. So yeah, it is a bit shocking. Even like, I mean, my whole career has been in crypto too. So even having felt, some degree of like sometimes there's lulls, sometimes there's highs. Now it's definitely a weird one. It's one of those things where it's like you feel more awkward than sad almost because it's like I keep thinking like am I missing something? And occasionally of course like everyone does miss things. You think like oh some really cool step proposals are. I mean, I'm sure we'll talk about them like I went through a bunch of them and it's sick. Like there's sick things happening. But with that, there's often not sick things happening without money, right? So
Yeah.
yeah, well, we can talk about grants too, but like that just now these like what's happening is happening on
Mm.
account of money, not like people are, rarely bootstrapping their really great idea. Like it's just not possible, no matter how good your idea is.
Yeah. I think this is why I said in the beginning, like this is definitely a Zoomer's perspective, because I think if everyone here would be like, yeah, dude, like that's how that's how like you guys are so young and dewy eye, like that's how business works. I think like our cycles work. I think like you said, it feels like kind of rock bottom. The tourists, the grifters are gone. But I think that's like the circle of life. That's kind of the natural part of a nascent industry, or not a nascent industry, but now like a growing and maturing industry, is that there is a lot of boring shit that happens, because a lot of the boring shit that happens, in traditional Web 2 world is what, is the backbone of the economy, is the backbone of the industry. And I think the conversation like we're having now is good. And hopefully this as labeled as a Zoomer's take or Zoomer's, opinion or discussion on what's happening in the issue will attract more Zoomers to listen. Because I think a big fault of my Zoomer colleagues, to keep using that word, is that they see, and I'm not saying you're doing this, but I think the intent or the take you have is something that a lot of other people have, but they don't have the nuance that you have with the take, is that, oh, it's boring and nothing really crazy and cool is getting funded, I guess it's not worth my time, right? And that in and of itself is kind of like a tourist behavior. But I think the people that are staying, like us, like I think there's a lot of Zoomers that are staying, because a lot of people, they look behind the hood and they understand why we're here and what we're doing. That's the important part moving forward, is this is naturally part of the cycle. And it's almost like a speed run in business education. Like everyone on Twitter, all of like the older people, I not in a bad way, but just like people who have been working in or been in the workforce 6, 7, 10 years, even more longer than me, understand like or they always tell me like the way you're going to learn about, running a business or doing BD or project management or, dev work is, not by taking a course and paying to do it, but like actually going out there, putting yourself on the line, being willing to embarrass yourself, or, on Twitter or in, Slack conversations, and learning to do it by yourself. And I think that's kind of what we're seeing right now. There's not a massive, casinofication financial incentive for young people to come in, at least in the current sense. I mean, it was in 2019, 2020. Like it's a much more condensed cycle, and this may not be, applicable in 6 months, but, you're seeing, I think, a lot of the, people who are really wanting to learn and work, and are grinding on the TL or grinding in these forums, to create new primitives, to create new businesses on chain. And that's not sexy, and that's very hard. And there's a reason not a lot of people are founders or startup founders or freelance creators, or DAO contributors. Like something we've talked about on the podcast forever is like, it's easy to make the DAO contributor life sexy, but like it's currently in its form, it's very hard. And there's a lot of people that are trying to make that as easy as possible, and make, the rails. I hate using all these buzzwords, but like, make it as easy as possible to do that. So it was a bit of a rant, but I feel like, we're in a good spot. It's a matter of perspective and understanding, this is kind of how it is. And to, take the Zoomer energy, direct it towards like positive things. And, not trying to, change the entire industry, but like, I think what we do really well, CHG, and why we work well with Frisian, and other Tally members is like, we bring a youthful energy and youthful perspective, um, and they counteract that and put us in check when sometimes maybe we have these ideas or have these preconceived notions of how things work in the real world. Um, we're very receptive to not criticism, but just like feedback on like, hey, like this is how it's done. And then we come back and be like, okay, well, what if we did it this way? And a lot of times, um, at least the people I want to work with like Frisian is very receptive and here's our point of view. That's why like on Twitter and stuff, I try to call out like the Zoomer boomer culture war. Cause I think shitting on either side is not particularly productive. And I think it's something you're really good at too, is like bridging the gap between, the Zoomers, the new generation and the current generation that's been in the workforce for 20, 30 years. So
Yeah, it's not just like age, but it's like experience in the workforce. So many of my friends are just like, TradFi bankers. And when I complain to them, like, oh God, like nothing's happening on Twitter, they're like, dude, my bank hasn't like received like anything in ages. Like they're like sitting around. It's crazy. People that had like the gnarliest jobs ever are now like taking holidays. Which is yeah, weird to accept, but I agree. I think I've always thought this like Tally the company is in like a unique position in crypto where it functions both like officially in terms of like how people are paid and like HR and stuff, and also like the culture is not completely crypto, let's like whatever goes, which is cool. I like at Index Coop, that was like crazy town, for better or for worse. It like whatever went. That's even as I said, like so many things got funded that were just wild. And like I was enjoying that as well. So now I think Tally, and I'm sure a lot of other places are adapting to this sort of like at least middle of the road approach where it somewhat functions as a traditional company because like tradition happens for a reason. Like it works, right, in the regular business world. So
yeah,
yeah, it should be. I mean, to be fair, have you seen any like do you still see remnants of the bull market anywhere? Or do you see like a light at the end of the tunnel coming up? Or do you think we're still in the trenches?
yeah, I think it'll be a different type of bull market. I think like the the craziness of like the 2020 2021 cycle. I think with each bull market, and this is definitely a take that is nuanced and or not nuanced, but like evolving because I try not to have too many like market or financial takes. But I think, or hopefully, I'm hoping that like with each bull cycle or each iteration of the industry, it gets a little bit more and more not official, but like respectable. Um, and it's hard, like you said, like you want to have parts of the crypto culture, but also parts of the traditional world. And that's why I think it's a hybrid model. It's not going to be a complete, revolution. And that's something we've talked about, internally with some like of the chads at Tally. It's like, a complete revolution is not, what's going to take this industry to the next level. It's a, what's the word? A melding with the current system and making, or taking the crypto value prop and making the current system better. So I think the next cycle, and I see this currently with, all of these grant proposals in the STIP program and like all these on-chain proposal debates for these large DAOs with these massive treasuries that kind of mimic some like lower market cap, you know, massive, S&P 500 companies is, you know, you talk about like the bank, your traditional friends and their banking jobs, like taking holidays and being bored and stuff. I think it's the floor level for this industry is like, okay, this is as boring as it's going to get. Like there's still like very heated debates around like grant proposals and different allocations of funds from the treasury and DAOs. Like, yeah, it's going to be turbo niche forever, but that's the same way any you know, any business where you're making a ton of money, like it's turbo niche. Like not everyone is like a, an operational expert like Tim Cook or Bezos. Like they're turbo niche. It's just going to be, you know, understanding that, the market we're in, or the corner of the world or internet, wherever you want to call it, we're in is, is niche, and that's part of life. And I think if you can just, take that turbo nicheness and captivate that market as much as possible, then that's what you need to do. And I think that's what crypto is doing now, or maybe not. I'm not going to speak for crypto as a whole, but for DAOs as a whole, that ecosystem is kind of doubling down on the tech, doubling down on the way things work from like an infrastructure perspective with Tally and on-chain operations. Like something we see is like working with all these protocols is, with every proposal and every process and every DAO launch, like there's new things and new like iterations that we're building from a product side that are helping like propel, the next wave, the next cycle, the next, 100 or 1,000 people into the ecosystem. So that's where I see kind of like maybe I don't like thinking of it more of like, oh, we're not in like the bull versus the bear, but more just like it's constant iteration. And same as I know, and I think anyone listening to this knows, like there's progress being achieved literally every day. It's just a matter of, conviction and understanding like, hey, it's going to be a while. And we've said this this podcast has been during the bear the entire time we've been doing it. And we've been chugging along with new shit to talk about every week. And, yeah, I mean, do you see any particular, like you're more plugged into the non-DAO side. You're still plugged into the DAO side, but I know you're like still as you have like colleagues with like Index Scoop and NFT Twitter and whatnot. But I feel like, even in the lows that we're in now, like there's still a lot of the optimism and fun that's been around since the beginning.
Yeah, in some ways, I think this is like an opportunity for both like DAOs, like very, serious buttoned up DeFi protocols, and also individuals to like decide what they want to do and also what they excel at and like meet in the middle of those two and try to grind out something. Yeah, even like yeah, I'll shill my favorite NFT project Based Ghouls. Like it's such an active community. I remember like about a year and a half ago when things were at least somewhat better, where there was like daily giveaways, like daily fun random stuff. They would give out grants for people to like make their own versions of things. It was crazy and it was cool. But now it seems, more serious, but there's still those fun things. There's like, DJ sessions on Tuesdays, which is cool. I know a lot of other projects have pivoted, like we've talked about before, like Metropolis pivoting, and you can make your judgment on whether that's like what they should be doing or not. But you think the decision behind that must have been like, what are we good at? And what can we make money at, and find that, because now is the time where you have to make that decision. Like you can't just talk about like, well, let's try out these few more 5 things and then let's try to, go down to what we have to. Even Tally to some degree has made some like hard decisions of like how's it compare working at Tally a year ago to now, where now the vision of Tally is pretty clear to me, but I've only started, a few months ago. So I wasn't through any kind of roller coaster of like, what do we focus on? What do we do? I know you even seen a few different like taglines from Tally.
Yeah. Yeah. I think just evolving with the ecosystem I think when we started like having the idea of having PMF and then actually finding PMF, big difference. And as we find PMF, as I think anyone would say, like you find PMF, then you just double down on it. I think, yeah, it's been cool to see. I kind of alluded to it earlier, just like that's the sign that I see as a positive in the light, proverbial light at the end of the tunnel, is there's always a feature request or some type of support for a DAO launch, service, consulting, product, whatever, from people in the ecosystem. And it's not so much, I almost like don't want to say this because it's like alpha for someone if they want to build. Like there's too much demand for Tally services, and not enough of a supply, which is a good problem to have. But hopefully, bearing this at the end of the episode will be okay. But uh, yeah, I think the issue then, what I think about it is like, okay, that's that's great right now, but how do we sustain that for the next, year and a half, 2 years? And I think it's just a question of, to me, it's getting more Zoomers on board, because I think that's where we're going to find the majority of the next, wave of people in the space.
Yeah, it seems like that's the way it's going, even with like empowering protocols to empower others financially. Like the STIP program, I think that's like weirdly a unplanned natural transition into that exact thing. Like there is a light at the end of the tunnel that can be seen to some degree. I mean, people like Arbitrum is giving out grants that can be used for anything. Some are just liquidity incentives. Like it's not like, oh, we're going to use this to build like the resources that we need for what it's just liquidity incentives. Like people are trying, and that counts for something, you know. I think Tally's STIP proposal is also like super exciting because we're like we want to put DAOs on chain. That's our like mission, vision, and in a really abstract way, like the on-chain thesis is very important to Tally as a company, and also a bunch of individuals like me and you, Frisian, at Tally. So now we actually get funding from Arbitrum to execute on our vision, which is like so cool.
Yeah.
You wouldn't be able to do that if there was, like everything was in the pits. So I have some hope for sure that this will be like coming to an end at a hopefully
Yeah.
reasonable time. You always freak out when you try to say anything too positive because
Yeah.
it's like, oh,
No.
I'm gonna bite my tongue.
Yeah. I think I like something I've been writing about a little bit, just personally. Like, um, I think there's been a conscious shift into how do we, there's the meme of onboarding the next billion people, but like there's been a conscious shift from a product perspective. What I'm seeing with a lot of protocols like Zora, and I think Arbitrum's incentive program is a good example of this, because I think it's funding people who want to create products that are going to do what I'm about to say, which is how do we make it as easy as possible to get new users, to onboard new users. And people talked about that forever. And I think hopefully they were building it while they were talking about it, or maybe they just recently did it and built really fast. But there's been a lot of new, product features, and maybe just, primitives that are being built on top of these protocols, or not on top of these protocols, but on top of the Web3 rails, that are making it super easy to onboard new users. And I see that as a positive sign, because I'm always thinking like, okay, I love to cross pollinate what I'm doing on crypto Twitter and in the crypto world with my normie friends, because to me, like, I understand, or I value what I do, and I value this industry and the ideals so deeply. And I want to be able to share that with as many people as possible. And I know and I've said it on the podcast forever. Like, I think the majority of people I went to college with, or who are in college now, would prefer to work the way people in crypto work. So why don't they? And I think it's a messaging issue, not in the sense of like, it needs to have a different like copywriting, but messaging in the sense of like, they're not even receiving the message. It's not even coming to their phone. It's just, getting returned to sender. And I think these primitives, particularly with Zora, not even just on the technical side, but on the social positioning side, which is a whole different conversation. But I think that is starting to shift, and the meta is starting to shift, with the Zoomers. And I think as X, and I think TikTok and some other, hopefully Meta's platforms start to integrate crypto in a in your face crypto way, we'll start to shift that meta even more. And sky's the limit after that. But yeah, I feel like I've just been ranting constantly, but I feel good. I think it's just a matter of like trying to individually putting the onus on yourself to bring new people on. Something I think you're really good at, CHG, and some people I know like LDF, Rico on Twitter are really good at. So exciting times, even though it feels dark and bear markety because he's
Oh,
so low.
yeah. I know. Gosh. Well, oh gosh, yeah, I saw so many I just like I feel like my Twitter, since I don't tweet that much, there's often like not that much serious content. It's mostly like memes, or if I see something that I don't recognize, it's just because it's somebody like making fun of someone else, or like it's a joke, you know? And that's why it's come up on mine. But I feel like yeah, the vibes are still there to some degree. Like people have hope, people are spreading the word. A lot of the like a lot of the stuff I see on Twitter is like, oh yeah, dude, it's like to some founder posts whatever, any kind of thought leadership, and all the comments will be like, oh yeah, sweet dude, how much is your token worth? And then it's like a screenshot of, CoinGecko with their token worth like point oh 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 oh. I even thought something. I thought like I had made a transfer mistake the other day because because I looked at my account and I was like, what the hell? And it was just because index token, which I'm hodling from ages ago with the hope it'll go up to $55 again, is at under $1 now. So you know how it goes,
Damn, it
but
was at 55 at one point.
yes, dude. This is one of the craziest like things. There was this one night when it was at $55 and I had been paid in it when it was like at $15 or $10 a day like the month before. And obviously months before that when it was even lower. So I like was just in heaven. I was like, it got to 55. It was like a big high. I went out with a few friends in London and this was like, okay, this will never happen again. But like, this is like the coolest thing that ever happened was I was like, I'm going to buy shots for this entire pub, which was sick, I mean, it wasn't that crazy expensive, but still, it was sick feeling rich for a second. And then after that, I never off ramped the money or sold my index. So I really never had that money. But it was nice to feel like that for a second. So that, gives me hope. Like maybe there's something like that again. But now is just such the opposite where it's like everybody's living in reality now. There's no more of that like bullshit from 2 years ago where you're like, oh my God, I'm like, this could be it. Like now people are really sticking to what actually works. Which is,
It's
pros and
good.
cons, like
Good.
everything.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's good overall, I think.
Yeah.
Hopefully. With a million
We'll
caveats,
see.
it's
We'll
good.
see. Yeah, we'll see. I'm happy to be here. I'm sure you are too. But yeah.
Yeah. I mean, at the very least, I like uh, there's obviously trade-offs, but I like the way that crypto works. And the
Yeah.
way that people in crypto work. Even having this, like, if you go way back, like even having this belief to whatever degree it is, like if you work here, you believe to some degree that like this, could change the world in a, cringiest way possible. But like, if you believe that, there's something different than if you were,
Built diff.
doing adult
Built
daycare at
diff.
Deloitte every day. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I like the vibes. Like the same people that I was friends with that I was like stoked with when we were rich in 2020, now we're laughing about our decrepit bags this year. So the people are still there and a lot of the projects are still there, whatever path they've taken, I guess. So it doesn't feel like super foreign, but it does feel dead.
Yeah. Well, all we can do is inject some life into that, which I think is what we plan on doing. So, well, it's been a Zoomers conversation on the state of the DAO ecosystem and the crypto market. Not so much the crypto market, just the DAO ecosystem. If you made it this far, thank you. As always, check out the Tally newsletter. CHG writes that every week. It went out earlier this week around Arbitrum's STIP proposal or STIP incentive program. Go check that out. Otherwise, we will see you next week for episode 60. I believe this is episode 59 or 60. I'm not sure. Always lose track. But if everyone will join us next week, we'll be back with the trio. As always, peace.
Peace.